so that we're all together at the same time, even though, please do not be fooled by the clock on the wall. The clock on the wall in the back has not yet been adjusted. So, welcome to the Morristown Unitarian Fellowship. My name is Marjorie Wormser. I will be your Sunday associate this morning. Maybe someone could close the doors in the back. Thank you. And welcome to those of you who are dialing in through FaceTime, and not FaceTime, Facebook and YouTube. So welcome to the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, where we covenant together to weave the fabric of community from the strands of our separate lives. We are a vibrant, inclusive, justice-seeking congregation, and whoever you are, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We adhere to the principles of Unitarian Universalism, which you will find on a little card in the pocket of the seat directly in front of you, and you're welcome to take that card with you. Our principles are also found on our website at muuf.org. This would be a great time to silence any phones or other noise-making devices that may make sounds during this morning's worship service, and take a moment, if you would, and greet someone you didn't come with today. It could be a hello, it could be an elbow bump, it could be to whatever level of comfort you are. Good morning. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for greeting one another so warmly this morning. I have a few brief announcements to share. Please take a seat. Okay, I have a few brief announcements to share. Please respond to a call, email, or text about nominees for the Ministerial Search Committee. We hope to complete the calling tomorrow, and if you have not heard from COM or the Ministerial Search organizers, please send a brief email to the office at muff.org, and you will get a call right away. There will be a new member class next Saturday, March 18th at 10 a.m. Reverend Joel will be very happy to talk with you about coming. Lunch will be served. The second and third grade religious education class is collecting supplies for an animal shelter through the end of today. I saw the box on a table in the Great Hall. Please consider donating cat food and treats, bully sticks or long-lasting treats, cans of pumpkin or sweet potato, Kong toys, and the second and third grade classes. Thank you for your generosity. There will be a mindfulness meditation this morning following this 11:15 a.m. service. I didn't get information about where that will be.
In the parlor, the former minister's office.
Thank you. The parlor, if you walk out these doors and turn left, right before you get to the terrace room is that room. And Reverend Alan Wells will be in charge of the mindfulness meditation. There will be a talent show on April 1st at 3 p.m., and this is 100% organized by the children and is open to all of us to show off our talents. Also, and chronologically, I forgot to mention, next Sunday, 2 p.m., Film Noir at the Fellowship. The Maltese Falcon will be viewed next Sunday, March 19th at 2 p.m., and we have the extra treat. Among us is a professor of film at Fairleigh Dickinson University, David Landau. David Landau will be present to talk about the film after we view it. And please, let's see, and if you need a ride or additional info, is Kim Dunmaynell? Nope, Kim's not in the room at the moment, but you can write a note to fun@muuf.org. Sorry about that. Okay, finally, Reverend Joel will be hosting a Passover Seder dinner on Thursday, April 6th at 6 p.m., and you can register on Realm. Please, if you'd like to participate in this, would you please register by April 2nd? Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Joel Miller. I'm the interim minister here at the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. So glad to welcome online folks and folks who are here in person. I'm thinking about risk this morning. The thing about risk is that there's risk to anything and everything we do. And sometimes I think we face the illusion that we can do something and have it be risk-free. And that's never been my experience. One of the more visible risks I've taken is this little blue streak I have in my hair. I did that a couple of years ago. I was just talking about being actually I was talking with my daughter and we were talking about adulting. She was saying, "Dad, adulting, which, you know, the responsibilities of having a home and a job and all of that. And my dad was always really great in supporting, my mom and dad supporting me as I learned to adult, my daughter and my son both learning to adult. And I mentioned that, you know, when I would have been about 19 or 20, and I actually wanted to be a little more punk than I was, and I wanted to put like a white stripe in my hair. But the risk of doing that at that age meant, the risk was 100% that I would lose the job I had. The boss I had was like, I actually asked the boss, and they were like, "No, I don't want you don't do it. You can't. I'll get somebody else to do the job." Okay, so I never did it. One of my good friends said to me when I came back and said, "No, I'm the boss said I can't do it." And he said, "Well, you know, Joel, it's not that big a loss because you're about as punk as Mr. Rogers." Later, I learned that maybe that's a good thing, but so I told the story to my daughter, and she said, "Well, Dad, you can do it now." And I thought, but I would risk looking like an old guy and looking goofy, like a goofy old guy, wouldn't I? And she's like, "No, Dad, it'd be cool." So I put this blue in my hair. And you know what? I don't care if I look goofy because you know what happens? I'm in the airport, I'm going grocery shopping. People stop and go, "I love your blue." And then we end up talking and I learn their names and I find out, I meet people and talk with people. I love it. All kinds of folks. This is blue in my hair. It was worth the risk. And the nice thing is, my employer is really cool about things like that. I'm so pleased to welcome you here to the fellowship and our celebration of life this morning. And I will light our chalice now. I invite you to share with me in the words of affirmation we'll say this morning. Love is the spirit of this fellowship,
and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to speak the truth in love, and to help one another.
Let's sing together. There's a river flowing in my soul. And if you would like, you can see the words and the music in the Teal hymn book, number 1007. You don't really need it. Please stand and body or spirit as you're most comfortable.
There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that
I mentioned before that I grew up in a family business. It was a jewelry business. And it was fun to, this morning when the kids were here, share with them a little bit about what it was like to grow up in a family business. And one of the really great experiences for me was that my dad was willing to take some risks with me when I graduated from college and I went to work in the family business. I'd only been there maybe a month, maybe not even that. And it was summertime and it was time to make an order of some jewelry for the Christmas season because we were planning ahead. He sat down with me and he talked about how he looked at the risks that were ahead. Could we sell enough of the jewelry we would make ourselves or that we would order so that we didn't have a lot of money tied up in stock that we couldn't sell? What were we going to order? He helped me think it through. And then when jewelry salesmen came in from one particular business manufacturer we worked with, he made his order, and then he called me up and he said, make an order. Order what you think you can sell. I was 22, and actually somebody was asking me about it just about half an hour ago, and said, were you nervous? Maybe I was a little too young to understand I needed to be nervous, and I made an order. And the order went, and some months later, the order came in. It was about late September. We're getting ready for the Christmas season. Dad said, the order's come in, and I opened all of the packaging and put all of this jewelry, the rings, the bracelets, the necklaces, the earrings, all of this jewelry. I put it into the display cases and organized it so that it was interesting to look at, beautiful as I could make it. And then my dad came, as soon as I put it out, he came out onto the floor, stepped back and looked at the case. And the look on his face was, oh my God, how are we going to sell that? And being my dad, he tried to get back that poker face because he was usually a really good poker player. And we talked about how we would sell it. And what was really interesting, years later, as he told this story, he said, and by mid-November, everything my son had ordered was gone and my stuff was still there. That's not how I remembered this story. I remembered that everything was gone. Together, everything was just, there was a complementarity to it all, a synergy. I don't know what. Everything was gone. We had to reorder twice. And it was great. Somehow working with my dad and his taking this risk with me. And let me tell you, this was not a small risk. We could have bought a house with the kind of money I was spending. So I've always been very grateful for the risk that he took with me, on me, that year, so many years ago with his 22-year-old son, and how much we learned together, an outcome neither of us nor anyone else might have expected. We light this candle. It's a symbol reminding us of the light we bring to one another in community, of the light we can find again when that inner light seems to have gone out. The light we have within us that can bless the lives of everyone else around us. And in this moment, milestones and passages, acknowledging the power of that sharing, the presence of each of our lights in community with one another, that it matters. Diane Marks, as part of a passage this morning, notes that Jerry Silk is hospitalized in West Virginia. Jerry sends her greetings and hopes to return to this community soon and be with us again. Susan and Jonathan Jeans write that they saw Allison Miller and David and Asher in Portland a couple weekends ago. They are loving Portland, enjoying the concerts, the gardens, and having lived in Oregon, enjoying Powell's bookstore. I love Powell's bookstore. It is an amazing and wonderful life passage for a child in this congregation. The children in this congregation have decided they wanted to do a talent show. And they are in a congregation in which they can say, we're going to organize our own talent show. You all can participate. And this is a congregation where that can happen. A milestone worth noting. Bob and Irene Mendelsohn probably have landed in Johannesburg, South Africa, finally taking the trip they began 3 years ago this weekend, and from which they had to return early. And a special passage I want to share with you from Judy Romano. She writes, "It felt so good to attend service last week in person. I will not be able to do that again anytime soon. I hadn't been feeling quite myself for a few years. And then last October, I was working the fellowship's table at the Morris County Coming Out Day street fair. I had an episode of some sort. I was able to finish the day well enough with Noelle's help, put away the tables, and get home. This began a quest to find out what was going on with this seemingly healthy body. Myriad tests, medical procedures to find answers were dead ends. And now I have an amazing team of physicians. 2 weeks ago, my team's consensus on my elusive condition was MPA-ANCA vasculitis. That is a rare and curable autoimmune condition. It damages the small blood vessels throughout my body. The next step, to put it into remission, is 4 weeks of infusions that start on St. Patrick's Day. It'll take 3 months to see if it works. The doctors assure me chances look good. Although my physical presence at the fellowship will be diminished, I will still be with you. I will serve in any way that I can. The future we have planned for the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship is exciting, so loaded with potential. No way am I missing out on this party. So on St. Patty's Day, raise an extra infusion of your favorite liquid to me. Wish me well. See you online, Judy Romano. I invite you into a spirit of meditation or contemplation or prayer as works best for you. Live in us, Spirit of life. We're alive. And we're alive because others have lived. And all of us born into homes we did not build. Live in us, Spirit of life. Live in us because each of us is so alone. No one can live our lives. We must live our own lives. And we must make our choices as we live for the day we die. Live in us, Spirit of life, because we are not alone. Because any act one of us chooses changes other lives, and every act others chooses changes ours. Live in us, Spirit of life. We will be hurt, most often in error. Hurt because living is risky. And we all accept that risk. We must in some way. Live in us, Spirit of life. We know joy when our souls embrace and when we birth new souls from among us. Encourage each other. Live in us, Spirit of life. We are alone and together. We are bound together by unbreakable bonds. We come to know joy and hurt. And through all of that, let us choose to live so that others may live with joy, with good risks, and so that our living is a salve to each other's hurts. Live in us, Spirit of life. Let us choose lives that bless those who live. Let us choose lives that bless those who will live when we are dead and forgotten by all but the holy itself. Let us live so they may bless the home of love we left for them. Live in us, Spirit of life, so that we may all live in you. For all that we bring, for all that we note, and for all that we share. Amen. So be it. Blessed be. I'd like to invite you to sing a new hymn. Alex, our wonderful Alex West, who runs our AV tech with volunteers like Gabor, the KISS this morning, pointed out to me that I've been choosing a lot of newer hymns, and so it means some learning on the part of the congregation. I really wanted to sing this one because felt like a good day to sing something with a kind of feminist image of the divine, and it's really a lovely hymn written by a Unitarian Universalist and the music composed also by a Unitarian Universalist. Lady of the Seasons Laughter. So our a guest pianist today, Axelrod, thank you for being here. If you would play it through once, we'll sing that first verse once just to give you all a sense of it, and then we'll sing the entire thing through so you get a chance to know this. Please stand and body your spirit as is best for you. Lady of the seasons, laughter in the summer's warmth be near. When the winter follows after, teach our spirits not to fear. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning year.
This morning's reading is from the book A Feminist Ethic of Risk, written by Dr. Sharon Welch, who is a professor of religion and society at Meadville Lombard Theological School, the Unitarian Universalist School for Ministry in Chicago. The only chance we have as we mature is how we inhabit our vulnerability. Our choice is to inhabit vulnerability as generous citizens of loss, robustly and fully, or conversely, as misers and complainers, reluctant and fearful, always at the gates of existence, but never bravely and completely attempting to enter, never wanting to risk ourselves, never walking fully through the door.
The ritual of an offering is a reminder to us in a service in which we celebrate life and note what is beautiful and wonderful about community. An opportunity in ritual to also remember how vulnerable community can make us, how vulnerable we can become, and how that vulnerability can come from even the labor or efforts of our very lives. And the power of that openness can change us, bless others, and change the world for the better. Our offering will be split 50-50 with Wind of the Spirit this morning. Wind of the Spirit is an immigrant resource center. They work to make rights and responsibilities available to all, and to do so through policies that are just for humane and for humane immigration, and immigration policies that allow all of us to live with dignity. You can donate with a basket that is passed, or you can follow the instructions in the offertory and the order of service. I was really grateful to my father for those risks he took when I was a young adult, learning adulting and learning a lot about life. It was a wonderful business. I sold wedding rings to people whose grandparents bought their wedding rings from my grandfather. It was an amazing experience. And my father took many risks with me, and at least when he commented on it, he commented on the success that came out of that risk-taking. He was very supportive. I always appreciated myself growing up in an environment where I could learn to take some risks. That was also true of the Unitarian Universalist congregation I grew up in. And so when I became a parent myself, I was, back in the 90s, the early 2000s, one of those parents that was sometimes called free range. And sometimes that was said with a little bit of a sneer. My children, their mother and I encouraged them, for example, to walk to school. It wasn't especially far away. It was about 2 blocks. There were a lot of parents at the elementary school where they went who saw them walking alone to school, and they got rather judgy about the whole thing. Some even suggested we were neglectful parents because of our free-range parenting style. Your children are unattended, walking to school all alone. You know, I didn't say this because it wouldn't have been helpful, but I was thinking, I used to walk 1.5 miles to school. It was raining and snowing. I was fine. I liked it, actually. I got to thinking, my grandparents might have said, I went to 10 miles, walked 10 miles to school in the snow and the rain, and I didn't have a pair of shoes, so. I did also stop myself from saying, one parent at one point said, what if somebody kidnaps them? I'm like, thinking, okay, that's really getting at the fear here. Okay, that's good. But then they said, to follow up, I suppose you let them climb trees too. Yeah, I sure did. I did not say anything. I just changed the topic because I didn't really want to go there. We let our kids climb trees. Our son, we had a big giant pine tree in the backyard. Our son climbed to the top of it, waving in the wind like this. He was having a great time climbing up. But then he looked down, and I heard him yelling, Dad, Dad. I talked him down. He was fine. One branch at a time. Don't look down any more than you have to. He climbed trees after that. He didn't need my help anymore. And the thing about being kidnapped by a random pervert that drives around and steals children. Okay, yes, it happens. It's a great news story, sells lots of ads. In the 1990s, the odds that a child would be kidnapped were about 1 in 300,000, and all but a handful of those, like the vast majority of those, were kidnappings by family members, usually some issue with alienation or misbehavior by the part of family members. So the odds that my kids would be kidnapped on their way to school were less than 1 in 10 million. Compare that, say, to the odds that they would die from choking on something they ate, 1 in 3,400. Or that they would be hurt or killed in a car accident, as low as 1 in 50, depending on how old they were. 1 in 50. Now there's some dangerous. That's something I can think of as dangerous. My kids had to endure this whole educational thing where they talked about stranger danger. I really didn't like the stranger danger thing because, one, it seemed overwrought to me, and so much time spent on it. I liked what they learned in the Unitarian Universalist congregations where they were growing up. We teach OWL our whole lives. Our children learn about how their bodies work. When they're very young, they learn about the parts of the bodies, where the bodies are, what they do. Age appropriate. As they get older, they start learning about sex when that becomes something that they're wondering what's going on. So when they were very young, they learned about bodily autonomy. If you don't want to be touched, you don't have to be touched. And if you're at a place like the doctor's, and you can give the doctor permission to touch you because you might want to, if you're not feeling well, you're going to want to get better. So my kids had this sense of that they had choices about how they would use their bodies and how they would live. So I'm thinking about all of this overwrought stuff about the stranger danger back then that was going on in the schools, and I'm thinking, all those kids, most of those kids aren't walking to school. They're getting back in their parents' cars and driving home, and they're several 100,000 times more in danger than they would be if they were walking, never mind the stranger danger. I researched the dangers back then. I asked their teachers. I asked ER doctors that were in the congregations I served. I went to the library and researched science journal articles. The thing I worried about the most after I did my research was that an overwrought neighbor would call the police because they saw my kid walking home alone from school, or call the police because they were climbing a tree, and that I'd have social workers showing up. And there were some examples in the news of free-range parents who had to explain things to social workers. I wasn't, an anything-goes free-range parent. My kids were obviously safer walking home from school than if I drove them. But I didn't let them go to a friend's house either until I was certain there were no guns, or if there were guns, they were locked up in a gun safe. I restricted their time on video games and television. I encouraged them to go out and play, make friends, spend your time reading a book, connecting with people. And I was worried about loneliness then, and now, of course, with the screens that are this crazy screen that follows me around everywhere I go, it's so easy to get it sucked in by it and forget to be in connection and relationship with others. Loneliness is a terrible, terrible risk. I let my kids go to the park without an adult. Now, the park was about a half a mile away. It was a great park. It was in an urban setting. And, I'm not completely unworried about bad people being around, children even. There's always risk. Nothing is risk-free. So for the park or the library, if they were going to go walk to the park or the library, they had to go with a friend or go with each other, their brother or sister. Free range didn't have to mean thoughtless and foolish. It meant thoughtful risk. Now, I wasn't trying to be judgy of folks. For some folks, stranger danger they felt was a very real and worrisome thing. Every family assesses their risks differently. Some families weren't free range, some still aren't. They balance the risks in the way that is right for their values and for how their families operate. But I wanted the same respect for how I evaluated risk for my family. There are many ways to balance and manage life's risks. But the balance matters. The balance matters, and especially for us as we're developing, as children grow, as adolescents learn to take more and more risk and be responsible for the outcomes. And the balance really became clear to me. It was about maybe 15 years ago. A member of the church that I was serving at the time told me, came up to me and said, I need some advice. I just had a difficult conversation with a young employee. It's their first job, their first paid job ever. They have some things to learn, and I need to help them do better on the job. And when I told them I needed to meet with them, they asked if they could bring their mom. And I said, I'm sorry, you may not bring your mom to this work meeting. And she said to me, so Reverend Joel, did I do the right thing? And I said, yeah, because I wouldn't allow it either. And I'm worried about that person because what happened to those skills about being in the workplace? You have to take some risks as an employee. You have to make some decisions. You have to be present. There's some risks you shouldn't take. Maybe you should show up on time. So I worry about how children and youth learn to have that balance. It's something I'm always thinking about in congregational life too. How do congregations balance risk and opportunity? Well, first we have to start with some freedom, especially with children. If children are going to grow up into strong, happy adults, they have to have enough freedom to safely take some risks, make some mistakes, learn to be responsible for the mistakes they make. And the balance isn't easy to find at any age, really. Adding to the difficulty of trying to find the right balance of risk is, as Unitarian Universalists, we've struggled with two things. One of them is the remarkable changes that happened in the last 200 years in this world. When my grandparents were born, people were still relying on horses to pull carriages and to get to work, or maybe just walking. And by the time my grandfather and grandparents had retired, they were watching rockets carry people to the moon. The advances in science and technology are amazing. And the other thing for Unitarian Universalists is how we think about how we're responsible for risk. What are the ethics we live by? And thus, the title of the sermon and the title of the book, written by a Unitarian Universalist theologian, Sharon Welch, who was Marjorie read from the book, an excerpt from the book earlier here in the service. Sharon Welch, in this book, A Feminist Ethic of Risk, talks about three key concepts in her feminist analysis of risk. The first key concept is responsible action. The second key concept, grounding in community. And the third one, strategic risk-taking. So the first ethic is responsible action. How do we prepare ourselves to be as successful as we can possibly be? To take good risks. And that's first thing that comes out of the reading is to be all in with our lives. We can't be so risk averse that we forget to live our lives. And here's the thing, our culture gives us mixed messages. Why I mentioned the incredible changes in technology and science. By the time my church grandparents, so to speak, the people of my congregation in the 60s and 70s, we watched how things had changed. We seriously thought, and with some good reason, that we could come up with right answers for just about anything. If we were logical enough, reasonable enough, and used science well enough, we could avoid all risk. Since then, we found that that's not true. There is nothing that is risk-free. There is risk to anything that we do. But our risks, the dangers, the potential for hurts, the potential to not know, cannot keep us from being all in our lives. And this is what Sharon Welch is writing about. She explains it this way, because also we have come out of a culture, older cultures, older expectations, the expectations of patriarchy, which have told us if we are thinking right, if we are following the one true path, we will always have the right answers. That patriarchy whispers in our ears, if we're smart enough, if we do the right thing, we will devise always the right action and avoid all risk. And it's a lie. It's not true. She writes, the only choice we have as we mature and grow is to look at how we inhabit our vulnerability. What are the risks we're going to take? What are the good risks? What's worth risking our lives for, our very being on? We can inhabit that vulnerability as generous people of loss, or we can do the opposite. We can be miserly. We can complain. We can live by what makes us afraid. Always right at the gates of existence, but not crossing into existence. Never fully entering. life, never fully walking through the door into tomorrow. So as she explains, what does this look like? If we think that we can live risk-free lives and then things happen, we get whiny, we give up. I see myself doing this. Progressives like myself, I think we're the most vulnerable at this. We see we weren't victorious. The election didn't go our way. The plans we made didn't pan out. And our logic must have been flawed. We must not have thought it through properly. And somehow, even though we know this isn't reasonable or fair, we begin thinking we ourselves are flawed. And we find ourselves always minimizing risk wherever we can in ways that perhaps keep us from living our lives fully. When I'm thinking this way, I find that I avoid uncomfortable conversations. I see members of congregations I've served who, thinking perhaps they can avoid all risk, will stay in jobs that they hate or relationships that aren't blessing their lives. In congregational life especially, this is a congregation that passed the 8th principle. We're working to be an anti-racist, anti-oppressive people. And truly, beyond that, to live as a people who really meet one another for where we are. The newcomer comes in the door. We try to understand them, who they are in the moment. Of course, asking them to be to live without violence with us, of course, but also to be open to the possibilities they bring with them, the differences. But then what happens is that we have this real-life moment that happens that reveals that we're racists. None of us here want to be a racist. I can tell you that. I know that. We don't want to be. And yet, the way that it works, the way that it's almost like something that transcends the individual, we find suddenly there's a way in which we've been behaving that serves racism. And it's a profoundly bad feeling. And our instinct is to turn away from it, to ignore it, or to blame it on something else, or maybe just feel despair and feel like we should just give up. We read about losing an important election or see climate change happening, and we get hopeless and despairing. But there's one of the opportunities again. One of the gifts of wisdom that Black Unitarian Universalists have offered me, or I've read in wonderful novels by Black writers like Toni Morrison or Octavia Butler. Don't be despairing. We don't have time. It's life. It just sucks the life out of us. It leaves us without opportunities. Giving up is very, very high risk for folks who experience a lot of depression. For folks who can easily be killed just because they've been pulled over for a brake light that's not working. And just in that being pulled over, risk being killed at hundreds of times the rate that I would be risking as a white guy. But they refuse to despair, because despair is a luxury taken at great risk, at the well-being of oneself and of others. We have to show up for our lives, not let fear and despair get in the way of it, not let the discomfort get in the way of it. Responsible risk-taking means inhabiting our lives in its comforts and its discomforts. Second point. So Sharon Welch talks about grounding in community. One of the things we know as Unitarian Universalists is that the phone's ringing. We'll let it go for a minute. It'll stop, right? I'm glad I remembered to turn mine off. It was on through the whole first service. We have to be grounded in community. One of the things about so many ethics, especially traditional ethics in Western culture, is it's based on individual action. And what feminist ethics are telling us is that knowledge only exists in community. Yes, each of us as individuals has to think about what risks we're willing to take or not take in our own lives, but we have to check it with each other also. Talk with others about it. What makes us human is the relationships we create with one another. Or to put it the way that the folks who taught me in Sunday school would say, it's like science. And when we do science, yes, we have a hypothesis, we test it using a logical procedure, and if it looks like it works, we propose a theory, but it's not even a working theory until it's been peer-reviewed. Not only after other scientists in the same field have read the paper, looked it over, and found whatever flaws need to be corrected, does it actually become a theory? Does it actually become science? Science only happens in community. Unitarian Universalism only happens in community. And truly, our ethics require community. So one of the complexities about that, especially for the fellowship in this particular moment, is that the congregation is doing a whole lot of very complex things all at once. So you're looking for your next minister and creating a search committee. You voted to build a new wing, and you're now in the process of the final stages of thinking about how that's going to happen. You're coming out of a pandemic, and the pandemic has changed everything. You know, before the pandemic, we weren't in a pandemic. Now, I'm not sure if we're in a pandemic or maybe we're in an endemic. I'm not sure what we're in, but there's still COVID. It's still around. We have to figure things out. It's hard to know how we talk together about risk in a complicated time when we can't predict the future. One of the things that makes the conversation simpler is a practice called adaptive thinking. I'll talk about it a lot more, so if it doesn't become fully clear now, I'll talk more about it. Adaptive thinking is great for good risk management, and it simplifies congregational life a lot. So for the thing to understand about adaptive thinking is that, first I can tell you what adaptive thinking isn't. The other kind of thinking is technical thinking, which is the kind of thinking you do if you're an engineer or if you're doing accounting and bookkeeping. So for example, if somebody's building a bridge, I want them to be making lots of technical decisions. There's a right way to build a bridge so that it doesn't fall down. Whatever those processes are of tension and support and all of that, there's a right answer to it. You don't need really need a committee to run the math calculations. In bookkeeping, there's right answers. Technical decisions can generally be entrusted to individuals. It's frustrating in congregational life to go back and re-debate technical decisions and technical problems, because there's right answers. Don't spend too much time on it. Get somebody who knows what they're doing and let them do it. And then there's adaptive thinking. There are no right answers for adaptive thinking. Important problems don't have right answers. It was not a right answer to build the new wing or not build the new wing. There was no one right answer to that. What you choose to do as a congregation in the future is ambiguous, and that can feel frustrating. And patriarchy says no problem should be ambiguous, there should be right answers. Patriarchy lies, it's not true. The most important problems have good answers. Adaptive thinking is about finding good answers, and there may be many good answers. There are no right answers, except that in congregational life, whatever good answer we come up with, there has to be a right way of doing it, which is that we listen well to one another, and we share deeply and love one another, that we're vulnerable. The thing about this particular process is that we live in a complex world. We can't predict the future. Will there be more pandemic later on? Will COVID evolve a bit and change, and will we have to adapt again? Maybe. We don't know. Living in a complex world means we have to experiment and be comfortable with risk and know what it is that we long for and dream for as we take risks and suss out the best answers we can come up with. In short, as we have those conversations, we have to be emotionally savvy. So a feminist ethic of risk says we have to be curious and not fearful. If we live by our fear, we'll never inhabit the life of this congregation in the way that's possible. Be curious and be appreciative, not resentful. When things don't work out, because sometimes they don't, we take the best risk we can. We make a good decision, but still maybe it doesn't work out. Be appreciative of what did. Don't spend time in resentment. Let's make a new good plan. And the third point, strategic risk-taking. So growing up in the family business, I saw my dad every year as he would get ready for the Christmas season, because that's the big season in the jewelry business. He would look at the odds as best as he could put them together. Where was the stock market this year? What were people interested in and buying? Where were the trends? And learning that was such a gift for me, and something that I was trying to pass on to my children. How to live with risk and to have that good balance. What does that look like? For anyone, I think that this, I found a book by a guy named Gaver Tully. He's a scientist, a teacher, a writer. And the thing I like best about Gaver Tully is he knows how to have a good time, and he knows how to help children have a good time, have fun. He wrote a book titled 50 Dangerous Things You Should Let Your Children Do. He wrote about the top 5 dangerous things we should let children do. And the first one, he said, was, number 1, walk to school. It's not as dangerous as we feel it is. Notice he didn't say think it is, feel it is. It's a feeling. It's okay that it's a feeling, but it's not as dangerous as we feel it is. He notes that research shows that kids who walk to school are healthier and have more street smarts. Number 2, climb trees. Each tree is unique. You can't pre-plan how to climb a tree. You have to be responsible in the moment for yourself, your body. You have to think on your feet. Think with your hands and body as you're in the branches. Somebody told me after the last service, there was a time when they were young and couldn't reach that first branch of the tree they wanted to climb, and went back to the tree the next day and found that somebody had nailed in some large spikes so that they could get up into the tree. Apparently, Dad had been watching, just quietly nailed in some spikes. Up into the tree they went. Third dangerous things kids should do. Get a magnifying glass and burn things. Nothing like harnessing the power of the sun in a driveway and seeing what happens when you wield that kind of power. Number 4, this is one of my son's favorites when he was little. Make a bomb. No, not a dangerous bomb, of course. Set some healthy boundaries around it. But I had a chemistry set when I was a kid, and I had a lot of fun with that. Chemistry sets are harder to come by these days, but my son especially, who even to this day is actually a scientist, Unitarian Universalism, church school, and his mom's also a scientist. He was built for that and primed for it. when he was a kid, he used to just empty the bathroom closet, and he'd take the soaps and the shampoos and mix them and see how they all worked. It was great. Later, I got him some dry ice, and he would play with that. They would say, at the store when I bought it, don't let them touch it. Don't let children touch this. I told him, don't touch it. It'll burn you. And then he played with it. He was fine. And then there was that thing where we would have an empty soda bottle, one of those plastic bottles, and we would put some baking soda in it and then some vinegar, and do that in a way that it would just blow up or it would shoot off into the sky. It was great fun. Fifth dangerous things kids should do to have fun. Super glue your fingers together. I did it. I liked it so much. And one of the things that the author says is that when a child does this for the first time, the mind literally creates new neural pathways to make sense of the dilemma that they can't get their fingers apart. And those new neural pathways made as you maybe put a solvent on and the fingers get open again. Or maybe you just leave it that way and let the skin eventually let go. But there's these new neurons, and a child's body literally learns the importance of that free range of their body, but they have a new understanding of the power of their body and what it means to have that freedom. I love that. He has 45 more ideas just like that, which I just really love. And it reminds me of what I got growing up as a Unitarian Universalist. When I was in youth group, we used to talk about youth empowerment. And being in a youth group where the youth group could, with adults around setting good boundaries, but still we would determine what we would do. We would choose curricula, sometimes write our own curricula, try to create community, just as the adults, our church parents or fellowship parents were creating community. We were learning from them and doing for ourselves the same thing. Learning that essential feminist ethic that what we create here together is not power over, but power with. I think sometimes even today it's wonderful that our kids went to Nick, the director of religious education, said, we want to put on a talent show. We would like to run it. And Nick said, go for it, do it. Where else can kids, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids, be respected enough to exercise their power to take over the meeting space of a congregation and put on a talent show that they run? By the way, you're all invited to sign up for the talent show. I've already signed up. Power with instead of power over. Another way of living out this ethic of risk. This will be a safe place for them to see what it is to create an event, to create community together. This is why we're here. To help one another fully live in our lives, to understand the risks that we take if we do and if we don't. It's the best way we have to live in a crazy, chaotic world, a world that sometimes is very unfair, very unjust, and a world that brings hurt and suffering, regardless of what we do. The world needs what we have in this understanding. Let us be uncomfortable when necessary and create a world that is comforting whenever possible. And let the risks we take be worthy of our lives, our very lives. The world needs what we have and have to offer. So I'm thinking, I am going to go for the closing song. I'm changing my mind here at the last moment. I'm going to go with this one because I'm betting, I'd like to hear you all sing it. The other one, I tried the other song a little earlier, and we weren't quite ready for it. And this feels like a good closing for you all. I love the way you all sing anyway. So I'm going to invite you to stand in body or spirit. We're going to sing this through one time, and then let's see if we can break it into a round. That could be really fun. Please stand in body or spirit.
Now the song goes like this. Come, come, whoever you are, wander, worshiper, lover of living. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. So what key is this in the book?
You're in F, but okay, let's go right.
Sing it there. Whoever you are, wander, worship, lover of living. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wander, worship, lover of living. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
When despair makes it seem that your light has gone out, remember, when we are here together with one another, we can kindle the light again for each other and for ourselves. Take the light you have, share it in a world that needs it, and know we will be here together again. Go in peace, be in peace. Please be seated.
but I was trying to open it with my teeth and glued my teeth together. Well, eventually came apart, but that's a perfect thing for next questions. What thing for a while?
It starts at 6:30. Oh, ours started at 6:35.